Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the March 28, 2024 executive session of the Clarksville City Council. The first item on our executive session agenda is the Planning Commission report. And first item on that report is Ordinance 76, 2023-24. Mr. Tyndall, please, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, City Council. This first case, I don't have a slide for. We did show you the slides last month, so I'll refer you to your tablets. This is the application of CJB Partnership. It was 0.85 acres from R1 to R6. There's two parcels on the southeast corner of Britton Springs Road and Morningside Drive and Ambrose Drive. It was in Council Ward number 3. The applicant's statement was to provide for single-family infill development with a private alley access. As you can see, the department comments there on the next page. That sidewalk would be required along Britton Springs, Ambrose, and Morningside Road, and that no access to Britton and Springs Road would be provided, and maintain a 30-foot setback from Britton Springs Road. You see also the school system comments listed. Historical estimates would put it at 10 units, and the staff did recommend approval of that zoning change. It was consistent with the adopted land use plan. The RPC staff has reviewed the area due to the overall loss of structures due to the tornado and have determined that additional density along the frontage of Britton Springs Road and near Fort Campbell Boulevard appear to be appropriate, as it provides a framework for existing neighborhoods to reestablish. Adequate infrastructure will serve the site, including supportive uses such as mass transit and retail services within a close proximity to the east. Sidewalks will be required as per R6, and no adverse environmental issues were identified. And there was no comments to provide you from the public that were provided to us.
Thank you, Mr. Tyndall. Any comment or question regarding Ordinance 76? Seeing none, we're now ready for Ordinance 85, 2023-24. Mr. Tyndall, please, sir.
Okay, let me get to that. We'll have to bounce around the slides a little bit today. Okay, the first case up for you, first new case, is our case Z9 2024. It's the application of Quick Trip Corporation. Suresh Burley is the agent with Ram Developers LLC. It's 3.17 acres, currently zoned R4 and C4, and requesting go to C5, and it is extension of C5 to the west. The property is located at the northwest corner of Vintage Way and West Vintage Way intersection in City Council Ward number 11. It's land cleared for commercial development currently. The applicant's statement is the zone change will allow for additional potential tenants for the proposed retail office development. C5 allows for uses that are not allowed in C4, such as professional office, professional care, and other retail establishments. What the applicant did tell us from the floor is that because it's currently owned by Quick Trip and with McDonald's being nearby, right across the street, that there's a lot of deed restrictions put on this piece of property. They can't open another restaurant, they can't sell groceries, so they're very limited in what they could do in C4, so they've asked to go to C5 to provide some of those medical and office spaces that C4 doesn't. This is from Rossview Road looking at West Vintage Way, and the property is at the back. That's the property that was approved by the City Council several months ago. C5 and the parcel to the behind this is where this will be. And there's the parcel with Rossview High School behind it. Department comments. Gas and Water said no gravity sewer was available. They will have to have an on-site pump. No other department comments or concerns listed. Planning Commission staff recommends approval, and the Planning Commission recommends approval. The proposed zoning request is consistent with the adopted land use plan. The request is an extension of C5 to the west. Exit 8 is increasing in its role as a regional commercial center for residents in the area, and adequate infrastructure will serve the site, and no adverse environmental issues were identified relative to this request. Again, both recommend approval.
Thank you, Mr. Tyndall. Councilperson McLaughlin, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Tyndall, you mentioned the deed restrictions, and I did hear that in the recording of the video. Would it be possible for us to get a copy of what the deed restrictions are for that property, or is that something we can get off of the assessor's website?
I can ask Mr. Suresh for those, but we were not provided a copy of those at this time.
I'd just be curious to see what the restrictions are. Thank you.
Yep.
Councilperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Tyndall, I know we can't do any kind of conditional approving, but at the site plan level, can it be required that they connect, seeing as how they do own, Quick Trip does own the land currently, but that they connect to the private access road of Vintage Way, just as the McDonald's does that's located there?
Yes, this property will have access to Vintage Way or West Vintage Way. I expect it to probably be maybe divided for more than one parcel at its size, so.
No, that's fine. I just know there's also a small piece that connects to Rossview Road right beside Vintage
Yeah.
Way, and I would have
No,
concerns with
they
another
can't use
connection right
that.
there.
Yeah, that's what, when we approved West Vintage Way, it was the sole intention to let everything here, even the sites that front, like McDonald's, doesn't have a driveway on Rossview, and neither will the next two parcels. They're all supposed to be internal, so we'll take care of that.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Any other comment or question? Seeing none, we're ready for now item C, ordinance 87, 2023-24. Mr. Tyndall, please, sir.
This is Planning Commission case Z11. We deferred Z10. This is the application of Sean Robertson. This is 0.18 acres, currently zoned R3 and requesting to go to R6 Single Family Residential District. The property is west and adjacent to Martin Street and Crossland Avenue, east of Cumberland Drive in Council Ward number 6. It's a current residential home, and the applicant's statement is to extend the existing R6 zoning to provide 2 single-family lots. There's the existing home. It's not in the best of shape. As you can see, it is a 50-foot lot. They would be able to divide it into 2 R6 compliant lots and grade it appropriately. Here's Martin Street looking up to Crossland Avenue. And there's from exactly at the corner looking back. It is set quite, you can see the roof line to the left lower than where the current houses are being built on Crossland Avenue. Martin Street does drop off as you leave Crossland Avenue. There it is right there. So the property starts just beyond that sign, that speed limit sign right there. Department comments and concerns. Sidewalk would be required along the street frontage. And the school system comments about there's capacities listed there. Historical estimates would be just 2 lots. Staff recommends approval. The proposed request is consistent with the land use plan. Residential supportive uses such as mass transit, retail are in the area, and the adopted land use plan indicates it's encouraged to maintain a desirable mix of housing types. R6 will be required per R6, sidewalks will be required per the R6 zoning classification. The R6 request is an extension of existing R6, and adequate infrastructure serves the site. No adverse environmental issues were identified, and the Planning Commission also recommends approval.
Thank you, Mr. Tyndall. Any comment or question? Councilperson Smith, you're recognized.
Were there any oppositions from any residents?
We received no emails or phone calls, and no one came to speak on this one.
And, thank you.
All right, any other comment or question? Seeing none, we're ready for item D, ordinance 88, 2023-24. Mr. Tyndall.
This application is also from Sean Robertson. This is case Z12, 2024 from the Planning Commission. 0.62 acres, currently zoned R1 and requesting to go to C5, Highway and Arterial Commercial District. It is the northwest corner of Tiny Town and Green Acres Drive intersection in Council Ward number 1. It's a single-family residential lot and home site. The home has since been removed, and the applicant's statement is to provide a commercial C5 development on an arterial roadway. This is Tiny Town looking into Green Acres. The property is right here on the corner. The home would have been between the trees and the road there when there was a home on the property. And you can see the driveway to where the home site used to be on the property there. This is looking back out Green Acres from the driveway towards Tiny Town Road. Neighboring properties. And Tiny Town Road looking, the entrance would be on your left here. You're looking back toward exit 1. The street department has said access from Green Acres Drive only. No other department comments or concerns. Planning staff recommends disapproval. The proposed zoning request is inconsistent with the land use plan. Interjecting C5 arterial and commercial zoning to a single-family subdivision frontage has the potential to negatively impact the surrounding residential neighborhood. The existing pocket of residential frontage should not be separated with the proposed C5 arterial and commercial zoning district. This portion of Tiny Town Road corridor has multiple properties in close proximity to this request that are currently zoned commercial and are undeveloped or vacant. Preservation of existing residential properties and housing units should be prioritized over creating new commercial districts in an area that has substantial amount of underutilized properties in more appropriate locations. Adequate infrastructure serves the site and no adverse environmental issues were identified. The Planning Commission also recommends disapproval.
Thank you, Mr. Tindall. Councilperson Zacharias, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Not a question, but more of a comment. I just wanted to let the other members of the council know that I've received 4 combination of emails, phone calls, and voicemails in opposition to this zoning application. I'll compile those and provide a summary of all of their concerns. But just off the cuff, it looks like a lot of them were similar to the reasons that the staff and RPC recommended disapproval. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. In addition to that, there were also 3 residents that came and spoke against it at the Regional Planning Commission as well.
Okay, any other comment or question? Seeing none, we're ready for item E, ordinance 89, 2023-24. Mr. Tindall, please, sir.
This is Planning Commission case Z13, 2024. This is the application of Gateway Baptist Church of Clarksville. Agent is Nick Liverett. It is 4.17 acres, currently zoned AG agriculture and requesting to go to R4 multiple family residential district. The property fronts the north frontage of Needmore Road, approximately 395 feet west of Needmore Road and Arthur's Court intersection. This is in Council Ward number 9. It's attractive land with grassland field and a few trees and moderate slope, and the applicant's statement is for a multifamily development. Here's the edge of the property on Needmore Road, looking back toward Whitfield Road, there on the left. Another close one, you can see that the property to the left does start falling off on the property. And there's 2 neighboring houses that do front Needmore Road on the left side of the property. Here's from, I believe, Arthur's Court. No, that's, hold on a second. Yeah, that's Arthur's Court looking back towards the property. So you have 1 home site, and then at the tree right there starts the request. Planning staff does recommend approval. It's consistent with the land use plan. The proposed R4 is not out of character with the surrounding development pattern of Needmore Road. The adopted land use states it's encouraged to maintain a desirable mix of housing types and adequate infrastructure will serve the site and no adverse environmental issues were identified. The Planning Commission also recommends approval.
Thank you, Mr. Tindall. Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized.
Yes, thank you. We've heard from many of the residents, and I think there was some in the packet. There's a line of sight issue on the bend of this road, as well as, I believe we did not pass it before because of a drainage issue on this property. Is that correct?
So I'll answer the first question. The previous application did a line of sight where it met the minimums. So we didn't make this application do it because we already have one on file. This site does have 2 prior zoning cases, one from 95 where it attempted while it was in the county to go from ag to C1. It was disapproved by both the Planning Commission and the county. In 2022, it requested to go from ag to R5, approved by the Planning Commission. It was withdrawn at City Council.
Oh, withdrawn, okay.
And then in 2013, we do have a church site that was approved for the property, but has obviously since expired since 2013.
Okay.
Councilperson Shekinah, you're recognized.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Mr. Tindall, just a confirmation, in the paperwork here, it has 50 units. That's the max, that's what they plan on doing, or is that the max based on the RPC's assessment?
When you see historical estimates, that is not the maximum. Maximum would be 16 times 4, 64 units on the property if they maxed it out. With the topography and the way you have that sort of triangular corner, typically when we see R4 units, unless they go vertical, you're going to get about 12 units an acre, and that's where you get the 50 units.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Any other comment or question? Seeing none, we're now ready for the next item, which is item F, ordinance 90, 2023-24. Mr. Tindall.
And I will just call the council members' attention to the previous case. Does have quite a few emails attached to the case there. Letter F, we're on F, Mayor.
Yes.
F was deferred by the Planning Commission, so we'll just need to probably take no action on that next
Okay.
week, and we'll just hold that till the next month.
My apology. It was written in big black letters, deferred on my agenda.
Okay.
That's the price you pay for getting old. Can't see it. All right. All right, we're now ready for item G, ordinance 91, 2023-24.
All right, this is an exciting day for us. It's been a long time coming. The Planning Commission is prepared and has approved the comprehensive plan and has forwarded it to the city and the county for your consideration and adoption. The mechanics of this, it just needs to be done via ordinance, and it does require a public hearing next week. After that, it just needs a second reading, and once it goes into effect, it can be our guiding document for land use decisions in the city. So there's our cover. I won't go into the long run-on sentence in Tennessee annotated 13.3.302, but that gives you a general idea of what a general plan, in this case we're calling it a comprehensive plan, is for a community. Specifically, does talk about economic development. Oh, there we go. Economic development, as well as preservation of health, safety, morals, order, convenience, et cetera, ad nauseum through that section. So you're more than welcome to look at it, but that is what we're supposed to be guided on when we make a plan. Through all the different meetings we had with departments, with the public, with the elected officials, with the staff, we put together a community vision statement for us, and I'd like to read that. It says, together, the city of Clarksville and Montgomery County will strive to develop as a highly desirable and cohesive neighbor community, embracing smart and balanced growth and ensuring a prosperous future. Clarksville, Montgomery County will offer attractive, complete neighborhoods where all residents of all ages can live close to work while enjoying easy access to everyday goods, services, entertainment, recreational amenities. I don't know about you, but I think that's a place I'd like to live, and I think that's the place we strive to try to make here going forward. And we'll provide these slides to you, or I'll have Lisa send these to you if you want to see them a little closer. Basically, a comprehensive plan, as the Planning Commission uses it, and as I hope the city and the county does use it as well, both as their departments and at the elected levels, is it's a roadmap. You know, how do we build a better community? Where do we go from where we are today? You'll probably hear it Monday, and I think it's a good time to invite you Monday, 5 p.m. at the historic county courthouse. We're going to have a joint city-county workshop where our consultant will be here to answer any additional questions, and then we'll be doing the same presentation for the county at 6 o'clock for their elected body. But our consultant says whether you're planning a wedding, you're planning a retirement, you're planning your future, same basic 3 steps. You got to know where you are today, where you want to go, and how do you want to get there. And this comprehensive plan for a community answers those 3 questions. It does a full assessment of where we are today. It gathers all that information I said from all those different groups, stakeholders, citizens, and others. Where do we want to be? It uses those opinions to shape each other. We don't just take one opinion necessarily over another. We've taken all those opinions into account. And then it gives a list of how we get there, and I'll show you that in a little bit. What doesn't the plan do? Well, the comprehensive plan does not zone any properties. It doesn't replace any industry standard plans. It doesn't regulate what you can do on your piece of land. It is a policy document that then the codes or other ordinances and policies should flow out of. There on the right, that was an early piece of information we had to show that Clarksville, of the 20 biggest cities in the state, we were one of 2 of the top 20 and only one of the top 5 or 10 that hasn't had a comprehensive plan in the last 25 years. So glad to now just leave Kingsport out there on the list alone, but we have now joined the list of all the other major cities in the state having gone through this process. The comprehensive plan has 11 chapters. Obviously, the introduction, and I thank Mayor Pitts and Mayor Golden for providing some great intro letters for that. It looks really nice. Chapter 2, if you knew nothing about Clarksville and you wanted to learn a little more, Chapter 2 gives you the basics of our community, the ages, the demographics, our employers, you name it, it's covered in there. Rents, home buying, all that kind of stuff. Chapter 3, that goes into how did we create this plan, starting with the vision and the guiding principles. It talks about all the different meetings we had, who's been involved to date, and how we assessed the community from the start. And then chapters 4 through 9 are really, if you were to build a community, you need all these things. You need land use and development. You need housing and neighborhoods, economic development, transportation and mobility, utilities, infrastructure and services, and parks, natural resources, and the environment. We went through an exhaustive assessment of each one of these points with the consultant looking at where do these areas, where are they good, where are they not so good, and what can we do with them going forward. And chapter 10, that's our planning areas, and I'll show you that in a minute here, but I think that's really what sets our plan apart from any local town or city's plan or even a county plan. We actually broke the county up into 13 planning areas, one including Fort Campbell, as well as, say, downtown, Sango, North Clarksville, and tried to break up the areas based on socioeconomics and demographics. And we realized early on, each part of the city operates slightly different. Different commuting patterns, different housing styles, different needs. And the planning areas really goes into the individual needs of different parts of our community, as well as the goals and objectives. And then we finish with chapter 11, the implementation strategy. Really, that's the recipe of how do we do all this stuff? What incremental steps can we take to make Clarksville a continually better place? Just for reference here, I show you the 1999 land use opinion map. For those of you who've never seen this, when we say it's consistent with the land use map, this is what we have to look at. And we have to be a judge at times. Is that dot purple or red? Is it big or small? How many are there? And this was compiled back in 1999. And I think I can point to a few areas that really haven't quite lived up to this plan. I can see an area where Hemlock and Google are there now. It was intended to be residential neighborhoods. There's also an area around 374 and Dover Road that it looks like it was going to be a very heavy commercial area, and I don't think much commercial has developed around that intersection to date. So, even in 99, the plan didn't quite come to fruition, but it is a guide. This is our new map. It's much more understandable. It's parcel-based, so it does, and we didn't get down to individual parcels, but it's groups of parcels. We tried to use roads and rivers for the most part to separate these areas, but we use the concept of future land uses. So the big use there in the yellow is suburban neighborhood. We also have industry there in purple, open spaces or floodplains in green. Civic uses will be in dark blue. Light blue will be commercial and industrial areas. The darker yellow or orange you get is more dense neighborhoods. So it gives us an idea of what the community should look like. In the lower left corner, that's the nodes that we've chosen in the community, the key areas that we want to show investment. Larger green nodes, those are going to be more commercially based. Smaller nodes are going to be more neighborhood based. Things like local access to goods and services, maybe around schools, maybe around key bus stops. So trying to focus different kinds of economic development around those key areas. And here are the 14 different land use designations. Again, 4 of them are strictly residential up top. And we have our urban core down the bottom. And then we go into some neighborhood commercial, corridor commercial, regional commercial. Just to kind of juxtapose it with our previous plan, it only had 1 type of commercial on the map. We now have 3. 4 if you include commercial, industrial, hybrid as well. We also go into public institutions, Fort Campbell, for instance, parks and open space, and then mixed use, and then commercial, industrial, and then the manufacturing and industrial. These are not necessarily zones. Each one of these areas is made up of multiple zones. A So for instance, a suburban neighborhood is mostly going to be R1, R2, maybe R2A, but could also be R3 and R4 if it's near, as we said, a major road, a major intersection at the edge of the community as a transition to a higher density use. Urban neighborhoods, that's going to be more your R6, your R2, R3, R4 kind of neighborhoods. Downtown, obviously, with the CBD district and centered around Austin P and the downtown uses. So it's a guide, and it'll say, these are short blurbs, but the comprehensive plan has a little more information on each one of these that talks about what the area's character is, the land use designation, and what zones are more appropriate in certain places versus another. As I mentioned, the planning areas or area plans, here's the 13 different areas that we broke out. And you can see they each really have their own unique characteristics. They do blur city and county lines at times. As we know, some of these areas are not as defined by the city limits as maybe others. This is just an example of the downtown. Every one of these has the same spread, so it'll be a picture, a description, and then on the lower left, the general recommendations. Downtown has the most, but it's everything from increased public spaces, increased residential building downtown, to even reducing the odor from the downtown sewer plant. So this comprehensive plan isn't always just about land use. We got that comment a lot. So, and then on the right, that's the blow up of the land use map, but it's also has individual key recommendations or projects in that area. For instance, the purple line here is improved bike and pedestrian safety. The yellow circles you'll see are gateway improvements. I'm not saying it has to happen immediately, but as you enter downtown, it should feel like you're coming downtown. So it calls out those. Increase water access up there at the parks where we already have started those things. And then finally, the implementation matrix. We have 15 pages of these. If you go back, see the bullet points you have here downtown, those bullet points will be reflected somewhere in the implementation matrix of who's responsible. Should it start today? Should it start soon? Should it start maybe a little in the future? We can't accomplish this all in 1 year. You've got to eat the elephant one bite at a time. And it gives a general cost. It also gives a lead department and then supporting departments. The Planning Commission, we are the lead department on a majority of these, especially when it comes to land use and development. But there are other departments like Street Department, Economic Development at the county, or even Fort Campbell that have leads at certain other parts to do part of this plan. The Planning Commission does intend to report back annually, likely starting next year, of what have we accomplished as a city and county over the previous year. And we can adopt a new Chapter 11 from time to time as things come off it, things go on it, things change. So that's how we can keep this plan fresh, keep it a living document, and keep it going forward. We obviously have a lot of thank yous. First of all, I want to thank all of you who have been part of this process at one time or another, seen a lot of your faces at the open houses or early on at some of the workshops. We've met a lot of you all one-on-one at the Planning Commission to talk about what this means for either your ward or the city as a whole. Thank over our 850 survey takers, our community workshop attendees, our open house attendees, and then all the different city and county departments, as well as folks like Austin P and Fort Campbell and others that we have worked with throughout all of this. It's been a long but fruitful campaign. I don't think our community's ever had such a under the hood kind of check that this is, and it is our pleasure to present it to you for your consideration.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Tyndall. We'll go through it in detail on Monday afternoon at 5 o'clock,
Yes,
correct?
sir.
Okay, we have one question. Councilperson Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Tiller. Very good work,
Thank you.
hard work. Looking at your vision statement, I see you say something as where people of all, you didn't say people, it said of all ages. Why would you say all ages versus cultural or races or a diverse people? Why would you just say all ages? Because that could be a 1-year-old, 2-year-old, babies. So I'm saying, if we're looking at this to be a comprehensive plan for all people to live, look like we would put in there something about all cultures or all races or a diverse family or something. instead of just all ages.
Well, I feel like I think all residents of all ages addresses that need in our opinion. I don't know if we needed to go
I
down
don't
every.
know, but it just seems a little vague to me when you just say ages. I know you said residents, but what type of residents?
All
I'm saying
residents.
do you want a mixed or, people from different countries come here to live?
I think
So I'm
we
just
welcome, yeah, we welcome everyone who comes here.
Okay. Well, you can leave all ages, but I just think we need to be more, detailed in, what do you mean? What do you mean? Just all ages? I know you say residents. What type of residents? Now, you're talking about all ages, but there can be a 1-year-old, 2-year-old, 3-year-old, that's good. Senior citizen, but I think you need to be more clear. It's up to you, leave it like that, but I just wanted to put that out there. That we need to say diverse cultures, mixed, cultures of all kinds, okay?
Thank you for that, and I think we recognize as a diverse community, we serve everyone,
Something-
everyone in this
right.
community.
Exactly. So I just wanted to make sure it speaks to
You
that.
got it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tindall. Councilperson Holloman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Just curious, how long did this take?
About 18 months.
About 18 months. Wow.
Yeah, little delayed. I will tell you, and our consultant will probably agree, and as a former consultant before I took this job here, we took the reins more than I think most communities would. We wanted to see this our way and not just given a plan. So I think near the middle, we started to get bogged down on a few things that we wanted to see, but in the end, I think it turned out the way we wanted and not just given a plan. And I appreciate them working with us.
Absolutely, and I can tell y'all worked really, really hard on it, and so appreciate you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Tindall.
Thank you.
We're now ready for the consent agenda. Madam Clerk, can you? Oh, I'm sorry. I gotta start reading my agenda closer. Okay, Mr. Tindall?
Yeah, we'll get a nice agenda here in a few months, I guess, in order. All right. This was presented last month, and this was, okay. This was deferred and sent back to have a traffic study completed. I trust that you've all received that. It was given to the street department. We got a copy of it as well. And is being sent back to the city council. The planning commission did hold another public hearing. Staff did reevaluate this. Again, this is a 2.16 acre R1 to PUD. It's 2 tracts of land that front Manning Heights at the northeast corner of Riverside Drive and Cumberland Drive. City Council Ward number 6. It's a former residential home lot with moderate and steep topography. The applicant's statement is this rezoning request will provide needed housing opportunities in the downtown area, will provide additional economic activity in the area, and enhance this portion of Riverside Drive corridor. Previous zoning history, in 2005, they attempted to rezone each parcel separately from R1 to C5, and it was withdrawn at the Planning Commission before it even got to the City Council. And there's the area. Here's the plan. This one shows up a lot better here. So obviously gray is pavement. The orange are the structures. The dark green is the open space recreational areas. There's a dog park to the left of that in a circled area, and then the green is the additional open space provided around there. There are improvements to Manning Heights. It's about 1 foot to 2 feet of pavement on either side of the road to round out 18 feet of pavement per the fire department and street department's wishes. The property, once you get to the property and head out to Edge Hill Drive, that will be 24 feet of pavement handled through a travel easement that will allow the parking for the structure as well as travel through there. The property's entrance is being moved back 50 feet up Edge Hill Drive. And then Edge Hill will also be widened, I believe, 5 feet for the entire length of this parcel, and the vegetation removed to allow for other emergency access on that side of the property. Sidewalk will be provided internally and going out to Riverside Drive on this parcel. Keith, other thing to note here, this is a planned unit development. This does require that the applicant at some point, if they want to develop this, they need to go to TDOT and request through their excess land program a portion of land that is to the southwest and west of this parcel. It's old leftover right-of-way that was Manning Heights before the bypass was even here. Cumberland Heights dead-ended right into the road right there, and then continued on as 3814. But when the bypass came in and they redid the intersection in the 50s and 60s, this Manning Heights was given a private road. It appears that Manning Heights is all within TDOT right-of-way, and the city has been maintaining that road. So it's under TDOT's purview to dispose of that. If the applicant cannot agree with TDOT to acquire that piece of property, this PUD cannot continue. A planned unit development has a 3-year clock from the date that it's approved, that it has to come in for final approval by the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission can extend that year to year with cause, or if they decide at the end of the 3 years, they can revert it back to its original zoning. We don't anticipate that it would take 3 years to go with TDOT, but if it should for some reason, we would just check in with the applicant around that 2.5-year mark and say, where's this at? Where's this going? Here's some architecturals of the site. This would be looking from Riverside Drive. Edge Hill would be to your left here. And that's in front of the parking area. Edge Hill again to your left. And that's the short side. That would face the Manning Heights side. And then this is the back side, the amenities, and some of the parking would be between these two buildings. Riverside Drive would be on the far side of that picture on the left. Here's the current site. There was a home site there. It has since been removed. There's the two neighboring sites. There's Manning Heights. Looking back, the property starts approximately where you see that orange marker up there in mid-picture. There's Riverside Drive to Edge Hill and Manning Heights right there. So again, that road where Manning Heights is will be pulled back a little bit to provide more space between Riverside Drive to make it a safer intersection. And then Edge Hill will be widened on that side going up the hill on the right side of the road. And this is looking back from Riverside up the hill. Those trees right there are on between Manning Heights and the road right now. And that's the area that the applicant would need to acquire some of that property to accommodate this plan. Staff recommends approval, and then I'll call your attention to the PUD plan. We did have a pre-application conference with the applicant back in November, so this has been a long time working on this with them through many different iterations of the plan. It does meet the minimum requirement of an acre or greater. Its density, it cannot exceed 40. It comes in right at 25 units per gross acre. It is at least 80% residential. It's 100% residential in this case. A traffic impact statement was required by the city of Clarksville, and the summary from Clarksville Street Department that the additional traffic will not adversely affect the intersection level of service, and they accept this study. Going a little further down, a PUD does exceed the minimum 15% required open space. We do have the architecturals provided by an engineer. In addition to the previously mentioned roadway improvements, the final plan should include the following requirements for Clarksville Fire and Rescue: removal of the tree line and landscaping to accommodate CFR access from Edge Hill Drive, extend the east side parking lot as far north as possible, and declare a fire lane no parking area on site, which they have done. They need to locate an additional hydrant at the southeast corner of the 4-story building and the southwest side of the 5-story building, and a proximal fire department connection. Red curbed entrances on the east side of the parking lot with fire lane and no parking are desired as well. And again, those are details we will work out when they bring back, if it's approved, the final PUD plan, which is more like a site plan. So staff recommendation, we're approving it, and it does have I'll say there's conditions applying. The condition is that they have to get that TDOT right away. Due to the unique circumstances of this application, including a portion of land currently under ownership of TDOT, the proposed use as a 24-foot travel easement in areas of landscaping, the CMC-RPC staff, the street department, and the developer does not wish for the owner-operator to acquire this area from TDOT unless it's known that the City of Clarksville Council has approved the submitted PUD plan. If the council does find the PUD plan acceptable, the below conditions should be applied. Condition: if this PUD plan is approved by City Council as shown in this plan, the portions of the labeled 24-foot travel easement, parking, and landscaping for this development that have been shown within TDOT right-of-way, as mentioned by TDOT Representative Nathan Gregory of the TDOT Region 3 Geodetics Manager, the development may go through TDOT's excess land group. If they want to pursue the use of this right-of-way, this application shows portions of the 24-foot easement, parking, and landscaping and cannot receive final approval until the development or developer owner acquires this area from TDOT needed to accommodate this travel easement, parking, and landscaping. It's also noted that this condition provides no guarantee that TDOT will agree to transfer this property for the use of this development, and moving portions of this project forward without TDOT's agreement is at the developer and owner's own risk. If the final PUD plan is not submitted with the TDOT area under land ownership of the owner developer, as stated in the PUD regulations, the application can be rezoned back to its original zoning or an extension granted by the RPC. The Planning Commission also recommended approval of this plan, and I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Tyndall. Councilperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have some questions, but my questions are actually for Mr. Crosby with Building and Codes and Mr. Smith with the Street Department.
Okay, all right. Mr. Crosby and Mr. Smith, your names were called. Y'all dressed alike today.
Not the first time we've been in trouble together.
Nor the last if you're running with him. All right. Councilperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Crosby, we received an email regarding the property being on an EPA watch list with concerns about the house that was demoed. I believe the house, if I'm correct, was demoed prior to the current owner. So that was well over a year ago that one of the houses was demoed. But I think there was some concerns that these properties, or at least one of them, are on an EPA watch list. Can you speak to that, please?
I can a little bit. I was unaware that the EPA had a watch list. So after doing a little research, I did find that the EPA had a watch list. I've got some paperwork that I printed off their website, dated October 1st, 2014. It's a memorandum that the EPA put out disbanding their watch list. Could not find currently or any time after 2014 that they actually do have a current watch list. However, they have a search feature on their website that you can search for any sort of property by address that may have any kind of EPA impacted, whatever they deem appropriate to put on their website. So I searched by the address. I was able to print off a certificate that simply reads, the search of EPA's facility registry system did not locate any records for the search criteria provided below. The search criteria was the address, Clarksville, Tennessee. I don't know if you guys want to see this or need a copy of it for the record, but this was what I was able to come up with for the EPA watch list.
If you'll provide it to the clerk. Councilperson Streetman?
And in regard to when a house is demoed, so that knowing that there is still one remaining, there is a process that they have to go through, an abatement process to verify that there's not any asbestos or that it's being handled correctly. I'm trying to alleviate the concern of those around.
There is a process that they have to go through for demolition. If it's not a commercial property, they don't necessarily have to test for asbestos. Any residential property, just going through the abatement process doesn't require testing for asbestos.
Okay, but they'd still have to handle everything correctly to ensure that it doesn't create an issue.
Correct.
Okay, that's all my questions for Mr. Crosby.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Crosby. Mr. Smith, you're in the batter's box. It is opening day, after all.
I'm sure to be.
Councilperson Streetman.
I like that baseball reference. Mr. Smith, I just wanted to ask you, of course, we received the traffic impact study. Can you talk a little bit about kind of the difference between a traffic impact study and a traffic assessment?
Sure. So what the council typically sees is an assessment, and I've heard it asked for several times over. The assessment is a very superficial document that you guys see based largely on a proposed zoning. We see Mr. Tindall come forward, he'll say this property is proposed to zone C2. The applicant has suggested that they might build a build-to-suit or a small restaurant or something to that effect, and they end up building condos. So the assessment is a very broad document about any potential uses, and it's a very, very small document. The traffic impact study, which is a requirement of the PUD, is a much more intimate document. It's specific about the use, the number of units. It actually gets into the calculation of the roadway, peak hour counts. It's a very, very elaborate document that takes some time to put together. And we've reviewed that. KCI performed that study for the folks interested in developing this site, and it is compliant. And the statement that Mr. Tindall made earlier was accurate.
Okay, and then what about the changes to Manning Heights Road and how,
Sure.
or where it's going to connect now? What are your thoughts in regard to that?
Jeff, you have a clicker? Oh, it's right there, sorry. This might be a little bit easier to walk through. So Manning Heights, the first image here, there is going to be two-way traffic on the western portion of this was the travel easement. Manning Heights presently isn't wide enough to support two-way traffic, though the residents in that area use it for two-way traffic. We've installed a stop sign to support that. We know that happens, but it is supposed to be a one-way street. With the widening of the roadway at the request of the fire department, their response from Station 1, and Chief Montgomery can speak to this, their preferred response is from Cumberland Drive. So they needed Manning Heights to be wider. But the added benefit, the ancillary benefit is that now with that widening, we can formally accommodate and authorize two-way traffic for those residents. And the developer has agreed to install no-through traffic signage and all of those things from those residents that would be egressing from the PUD site. So all of the traffic that would be coming from this multifamily development would be discouraged through signage from traveling through the rest of Manning Heights and egressing directly to Cumberland.
Okay, and then, of course, there's also the widening of Edge Hill involved in there as well.
Correct, and that traverses the site as well. So there's improvements to Edge Hill. Again, we've gone through several different revisions, and the developer has been very accommodating of all of our requests, including the shifting of the travel easement. So where Edge Hill, or rather Manning Heights, terminates on Edge Hill now, very, very close to Riverside Drive, that entire connection has been moved to the east to make it much more safer and to provide queuing space for any kind of traffic leaving towards Riverside.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Yes, sir.
Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized.
Yes, I'm not sure who can answer this question, but probably Mr. Tindall. So my understanding is right now, Manning Heights is a public road maintained by the city, but if the PUD is approved, the area in the PUD now becomes private, and it's just a through road. It's no longer a public road. Is that correct?
Sort of. I'll state what it is. So it is TDOT right-of-way that has pavement on it, and ever since it was installed, the city has maintained that pavement. It's still ultimately TDOT's control.
The whole road?
The whole Manning Heights, correct. If this gets approved, the travel easement will be under the responsibility of the ownership of that parcel, from pretty much where the driveway entrance is to the west. It'll be put under a permanent travel easement, which allows the public to traverse it. They can't just gate it off if they wanted to. It is going to be dedicated for public use. And then Manning Heights will be, as Mr. Smith said, signed appropriately to discourage the use of that for two-way operation. It will still have the one-way operation. So the residents could go through the PUD site. The PUD site could enter through Manning Heights. It's discouraged to exit from the PUD through Manning Heights.
But like on snow days, we're only gonna do the top half of Manning Heights. We're not gonna go through the parking lot part.
I don't want to answer for the street department, but that would probably be correct.
So, okay. I mean, and right now, so how how strong is the legal standing that they won't, it's a parking lot, so I'm gonna be driving my car through a parking lot. I mean, I just have concerns. How is that not a safety concern for the residents? It's a road.
It's a travel easement.
It's a road. For those houses to come back through, or if there's a bad day, if there's a wreck or something's going on that intersection, people are gonna cut through and use that as a road. I would,
I don't have a comment on that.
okay.
Councilperson Lovato, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to clarify because I spoke with the applicant today and there's some confusion. Next week, there will be public comments on this item.
No, we've already had the public hearing. There will not be another public hearing for this zoning case.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other comment or question? Thank you. Councilperson McLaughlin.
Sorry, Mayor.
It's okay.
This would probably be a Mr. Smith question, but in looking at the ins and outs of this parcel, if it is developed, was anything taken into consideration as far as coming out at Edge Hill that there would be no left turn? That it'd be a right turn only? No. Okay.
The traffic study, I think, supports the low level of volume at Edge Hill.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comment or question? All right, I think we're done now, Madam
think
Clerk.
we're done.
All right, thank you, Mr. Tyndall. We're now ready for the consent agenda. Madam Clerk, please.
All items in this portion of the agenda are considered to be routine and non-controversial by the council and may be approved by one motion. However, a member of the council may request that an item be removed for separate consideration under the appropriate committee report. Ordinance 71, 2023-24, second reading, an ordinance authorizing the exercise of the right of eminent domain to acquire easements, property, and rights of way required to facilitate construction of the sidewalk project on Ringgold Road. Ordinance 72, 2023-24, second reading, an ordinance authorizing the exercise of the right of eminent domain to acquire easements, property, and rights of way required to facilitate construction of the sidewalk project on Burns Darden Elementary School, Richview Middle School, and Clarksville High School. Ordinance 73, 2023-24, second reading. This item was postponed at the March 7th regular session. An ordinance levying a privilege tax upon the occupancy of any hotel or motel or any place in which rooms, lodging, or accommodations are furnished to transients for consideration. Ordinance 74, 2023-24, second reading, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the city of Clarksville, application of Johnny Piper for zone change on a tract of land located northeast of the Fort Campbell and Old Mill Road intersection from R1 Single Family Residential District to R4 Multiple Family Residential District. Ordinance 75, 2023-24, second reading, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the city of Clarksville, application of Maria Gold for zone change on a tract of land fronting on the south frontage of Needmore Road, 955 plus or minus feet east of the Needmore Road and Needmore Court intersection from R1 Single Family Residential District to C5 Highway and Arterial Commercial District. Ordinance 78, 2023-24, second reading, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the city of Clarksville, application of Maniqua Gold for zone change on a tract of land located south of the northern terminus of Ann Drive from R1 Single Family Residential District to R3 Three Family Residential District. Ordinance 79, 2023-24, second reading, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the city of Clarksville, application of James Pelham for zone change on property north of Earl Slate Road, 275 plus or minus feet east of the Earl Slate Road and Sanders Road intersection from R1 Single Family Residential District to R2 Single Family Residential District. Ordinance 81, 2023-24, second reading, an ordinance approving the acquisition of certain private property and divesting of city-owned property and authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement pertaining to same for a public purpose for widening and improving the Clarksville Greenway. Ordinance 82, 2023-24, second reading, an ordinance amending the official code of the city of Clarksville pertaining to the city code of ethics, ordinance 83, 2023-24, second reading, an ordinance accepting the donation of certain real property from Aspire Clarksville to the city of Clarksville for the purpose of a greenway development along Golf Club Lane, resolution 42, 2023-24, a resolution approving appointments to the Adjustments and Appeals Board, After Hours Establishment Board, Arts and Heritage Council, Beer Board, Regional Planning Commission, Regional Historic Zoning Commission, Senior Citizens Board, and the Tree Board. Resolution 45, 2023-24, a resolution approving a certificate of compliance for sale of wine at Parkett Market located at 2054 Fort Campbell Boulevard, and the adoption of minutes from February 26th, March 7th, and March 12th.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. To the members, item C, ordinance 73, 2023-24 regarding the occupancy tax. I'm going to ask next week that we postpone this until the May regular session. Working on a compromise plan, as well as I need time to separate fact from fiction. Any other questions regarding the consent agenda? Seeing none, we're ready for the Finance Committee report. Chairperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Ordinance 63, 2023-24, first reading. Ordinance amending the official code Title 12, Streets and Other Public Ways and Places, Chapter 1 in general pertaining to Section 12-124, sidewalks. This is sponsored by Councilperson Reynolds, and both the Finance Committee and the Transportation, Streets, and Garage Committees voted in favor of disapproval.
Okay, we'll come to the sponsor, Councilperson Reynolds. You're recognized on that ordinance.
Thank you. For the community, I began this process almost a year ago, and I have presented this ordinance and this supporting documentation so many times that the mayor has accused me of preaching. My good friend Jennifer Bland reached out and asked that I please work to improve the walkability in our community. Her brother-in-law, Larry Bland, died on 17 February while walking on Fort Campbell Boulevard. There are many areas in our on this road and throughout our community that do not have accessible bus stops. Our residents depart the bus on a patch of dirt and must traverse a goat path along a major thoroughfare that does not have pedestrian crossings. The walkability score of Clarksville continues to be 17.3 out of 100. We made no gains this year. Here's an outline of what is in the proposal. You guys have all seen it several times. Language is from established sidewalk ordinances in other Tennessee cities, as well as from ProWalk. Accessibility and the safety of our residents is now a priority. Sidewalks are everywhere. Enhancement of current and new standards. The street department is the only authority to waive sidewalks. Transparency and fairness and approval process to include documented audit trail that mirror the current process of other boards and that of TDOT. New minimum standard for sidewalks is 4 feet inside the neighborhood and 5 feet on collector roads. This is the request of the street department. Definition and requirements of barrier curb 2 feet is required. Updated the sidewalk priority indicator. While I've been writing this, I've encountered numerous legislative updates, as well as such as the U.S. Access Board of final rule on the public right-of-way accessibility guidelines known as ProWalk. This was approved 8 August 2023 and effective 7 September 2023. As of the last reading and right at the Finance Committee, I was doing some research, and TDOT has actually updated their roadway design guidelines, Chapter 3, multimodal design, on 6 September 2023 to reflect the ProWalk language. I've shared the updated language for the ProWalk and in the past, and I sent it to the clerk. I'll ask that maybe she forward it before the next meeting. I'm also sharing this latest handout is some of the language out of TDOT guidelines. And they came out in, like I said, September, but some of them are dated in August and July. The most important ones on this handout is if you look at the chart on page 3 of the handout, it talks about the required barriers based on speeds of the roads, and their barriers are now, I think, 5 feet for their roadway design. Yeah, 5 feet for their roadway design. We have 2 feet. And TDOT now requires for all of their roads a 5-foot sidewalk. I maintained on this a 4-foot and a 5-foot on the local roads, which would still keep us intact with the TDOT's guidelines. Most importantly in this statement, if you read it, is the statement from TDOT that says, TDOT's roadway design guidelines are intended to meet or exceed current ADA and ProWalk guidance. That's what I'm trying to do in this city as well. When I presented this at the finance, there was a couple questions in deference to the TDOT in our ordinance regarding the 5-foot requirements. I would first like to apologize to Councilperson McLaughlin and Mr. Bittner. I mistakenly created a sunshine violation. I was searching how to spell her name correctly and forgot to take her name out of the to line when I sent it to Mr. Bittner for opinion. So I'm going to clear those as I talk tonight, but I am sorry for that. That was not intentional. So the first question from the Finance Committee came up with the minimum standards. I had originally written minimum standards, page 5, and it said, sidewalks will conform to the most recent published version of the Public Rights-of-Way, ProWalk, and the most recent published version of ADA standards as appropriate. In the case of conflict between the provisions of ADA, ProWalk, or TDOT, the more stringent criteria shall apply. And that was actually 3 feet to 4 feet. ProWalk is 4 feet, TDOT is 5 feet, but again, that was before their update. So we will be adding, or I will bring in an amendment that will change this sentence to, we'll change the sentence, the more stringent criteria shall apply where applicable at the time of installation. And that means if it's a TDOT road, it'll be 5 feet. If it's one of our roads, it'll be 5 feet. If it's a local road, or 4 feet inside of the neighborhood. Let me see. The ordinance is effective. There was another paragraph, and that's the effective date of the ordinance that was in question at the Finance Committee. And the ordinance is effective immediately after approval for any newly submitted preliminary subdivision plats or site plans other than planning or other planning documents. I spoke to Mr. Bittner, who had already talked to the Director of Streets and Mr. Tyndall based on the conversation at the Finance Committee regarding this language. It's my intent to get Mr. Bittner's approval, but I spoke with Mr. Tyndall, and I will propose an amendment that says newly submitted construction documents, preliminary subdivisions, or site plans. It is not the intent of this to change anything that's already been submitted. With the permission of the chair, I'd like to verify, Mr. Bittner, that I paraphrased our conversations correctly.
Mr. Bittner, that's a question directed to you. Would you mind coming to the mic? And if you would, Councilperson Reynolds, please repeat the question.
First, I'd like to say thank you for leading into this very deep hole here with me. But I just want to make sure that I had those specific questions and that I presented them as correctly as we spoke. And I will assure you that I'll send the wording to you for review before I send it to the chair, to Ms. Canfield.
Okay. On paragraph R, what you said would be fine. The confusion was with the phrase "or other planning documents." So what I had recommended was we put a period after the word approval. The ordinance is effective immediately after approval. But what you've said, I think, is also not, also acceptable.
I'm sorry, I should have explained. After we hung up, I did speak to Mr. Tyndall, and that was his recommendation.
Okay.
So you said that you were going to reach back, but I had called him earlier, and so we just kind of crossed.
Okay.
So
I think that's acceptable.
I'll send a update to you and include the director of the streets and Mr. Tyndall, and just make sure that we're all in agreement of that
Okay.
sentence.
Very good.
All right, thank you. All right, I still have, at the finance meeting, Mr. Smith also indicated that in the past couple of years, many developers have used a statement, sidewalk to nowhere. And we're not required to put them in, even in R6 and R4 development. If we had required them, they would have connected, and there'd be small sections of sidewalks to connect at the expense of taxpayers. This ordinance closes those loopholes. Last month, there were images of areas that will be expensive to install sidewalks. The actual issue is that many of the images were less than 8 years old of the buildings, and if we had required them when we built, we would have saved dollars. But there's also a process built into the ordinance that allows the director of streets to give waivers or to best use and to waive that areas when needed. So I would like to talk, the last time we updated our ordinance was 9 years ago, and there's been major changes in federal law since that date. We talk about cost, but there's a section in PROWOG that is very important. The PROWOG document aligns with Executive Order 13563 and emphasizes values like equity, human dignity, fairness, which are challenging to quantify. Congress, through the ADA, recognized the economic and social costs of discriminatory barriers for individuals with disabilities, aiming to ensure equal opportunities and full participation in society. The final rule, based on these guidelines, aims to eliminate discriminatory effects by addressing architectural, transportation, and communication barriers in pedestrian facilities within the public right-of-way. This supports the broader objectives of ADA by promoting accessibility in transportation and public accommodations, essential in the independence and economic self-sufficiency of individuals with disabilities. Overall, PROWOG contributes to achieving equity and inclusivity for all members of our society. So I agree with all that. And also, we need safe routes to schools, since as a community, we have directed that if they live within a mile or a mile and a half, they have to walk. We can see a school from an apartment, and we can't walk to it. So if I will entertain any questions or comments.
Thank you. Councilperson Straitman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. My first question is going to be directed to the sponsor of this. You stated a moment ago that out of the pictures that Mr. Smith showed us, several of those were in the last 8 to 9 years and would have saved us money. Can you tell me which of those and how much money it would have saved?
Well, I can't tell you how much money, but he talked about the expense of infilling a sidewalk, for instance, on Peterson Lane, which is my neighborhood, and those houses are less than 5 years old. And if we had, when they were grading, and the developer had put that immediately when they were building, it would be cheaper. For us as a community to go back, now we have to do eminent domain, and then we have to buy, put in the sidewalk and grade it, and so it's 3 to 4 times as much money as if we had just required them when we built the property.
We didn't, but based on the way you said it, you said we would have saved money, as though we spent money that we wouldn't have had to. That was what and it was just one of the many pictures that he showed us.
Well, many of the homes that did not have sidewalks were not very old, and it cost the taxpayers a more money to go back and infill than if we just put them in the first time. So this ordinance is aimed at creating sidewalks and having them put in the first time and preventing the waivers and having the taxpayers foot the bill to build the sidewalks.
Well, now, the current sidewalk ordinance we have in place actually does put it on the developers to build the sidewalks in the neighborhoods that are built.
So what we don't do is the boundaries, and even if you drive down Dunbar Cave, there's a new subdivision along Dunbar Cave, and they've literally stubbed the sidewalks at the side of the road. PROWOG says that you have to have sidewalks on the boundaries, and if I have a disability and I need to walk to the sidewalk, I can't walk from the neighborhood to the bus stop because there's no sidewalk.
the boundaries, though, part of that would be addressed in regard to the request. I think it would be the only change that the director of the street department requested, and that had to do with the and. I can verify that with him because I know he was the one that spoke in regard to, he just had one change that he wanted to be made. And that was in regard to that. But I know, like I said, the picture you're referencing, that was actually the roads that, the sidewalks in front of people's house. So like I said, I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware that the sidewalk ordinance that we have in place currently actually does require developers to put sidewalks throughout the neighborhood. I think, like I said, and Mr. Smith, do you mind? I'm sorry, Mayor, I would like to ask Mr. Smith a question.
Okay, Mr. Smith? No, just you this time. Okay, if you will, Councilperson Streetman, ask your question.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Smith, in regard to, like I said, I know the change you wanted, add an and, remove a comma, add a comma, somewhere along there. Wasn't that somewhere in reference to trying to get those along the boundaries, not just within, but also along current roadways?
Well, sure, we can use the Peterson Lane example that was referenced previously. That's not a new road. That's an established roadway, but this was a new development. The way that it's worded presently, in previous city attorney's opinion, that language was subjective or arbitrary or whatever, capricious language, that our city attorneys typically use. It would have to be potentially both a new road and a new development to require sidewalks. If the comma is added here and is added here to that first sentence in the legislative intent, it differentiates that regardless, it's a new development or it's a new roadway or any one of these things, sidewalk triggers are automatic. So that's, again, that was last week when I made a presentation, that's my singular need is just those couple of grammatical things.
And that's something you've wanted fixed, I think, for a little while now.
For some time, yes.
Okay. Also, in regard to the 2-foot barrier, I've asked this question before, I'll ask it again, but that 2-foot barrier, especially in regards to city projects, that's going to be a substantial cost. I mean, are we going to, I realize when you're talking about a neighborhood being built, that you can put the stipulations in there that when that's, because they're the one building the sidewalk, whatever grass buffer or strip is there, they're going to be responsible for maintaining that. But when we're coming through and saying, hey, we've got to purchase part of your property, we've got to get easements, utility easements, and everything involved. I know you can't give a true dollar figure to it, but what type of increase is that to and these are older roads that were predated the current sidewalk ordinance that we have in place,
Sure.
But what type of effect does that have on your budget and our tax dollars to be able to pay for all of that?
Well, lots to unpack there. Let me start with a statement that was made in finance and then it was echoed again today, and I want to kind of put that in perspective. TDOT designs to PROAG, but in speaking with our own local TDOT folks that we correspond with regularly and our own correspondence with our consultants, they're of the mind they're still under the 2011 PROAG standards. And I have read some of the language from September and November and so on, but in practice, we're all familiar with Trenton Road. It's Trenton Road. We know that TDOT intends to widen Trenton Road, but at last glance, it wasn't on their 10-year schedule for construction. But their preliminary design has been published and shared with us at the street department with our engineering team with regard to signalization and our intent to tie into Spring Creek Parkway, for example, how to align with other. That document's out there, 5-foot sidewalks, edge of pavement. There is no grass buffer. And that's that's projects more than 10 years away. So TDOT's planning not to install grass buffers on Trenton Road. So if they have adopted those guidelines, those are foreign to us. We're not seeing those on any documents they're coming forward with. They're getting ready to put sidewalk all the way to McAdoo Creek along Madison Street. I don't think there's a grass buffer along that section either. They have recently installed, one of the things that was referenced also, Fort Campbell Boulevard. There was a project for multimodal that went through, and there is now a sidewalk, I think, along Fort Campbell Boulevard most of the way, if not all the way, to State Line Road. Maybe not both sides of the road. Cost. Who owns it? Who maintains it? Most of our residents are good about maintaining the grass buffers that developers install. The language, I think, in some of this ordinance speaks to the owner is responsible. If it's in the right of way, typically we're the owner of that. So if we're now responsible for maintaining 2 foot, 3 foot, or any kind of grass medians, we presently don't do that. So the additional staffing, equipment, and so on to accommodate that, I couldn't even guess.
Well, and in regard to that specific line, that line's in our current sidewalk ordinance that we already have in place.
Correct.
And talking about the TDOT and Madison Street, I actually live on Madison Street, and if the plan for that is a 5-foot sidewalk as well as a 2-foot barrier or grass barrier there, they're actually gonna have to come back, and actually Gas and Water First is gonna have to come back and further move into my front yard. I know that because there's a drain that would be in the way for that.
Sure.
And there would also be the cost of my driveway, because they would have to bust that driveway again and probably grade it differently, because at some point, when you get if you get 7 foot into my driveway based on the angle that's there, my driveway would look like this. For them to be able to do it to the ProAg standards.
And we
you
saw
know,
some
we're
of those
talking-
images that I shared
Mine
just
would,
throughout Clarksville.
mine would be one of those.
Okay.
I know that's pretty, as
I
you
didn't take a
stated in
picture of yours.
finance. No, you did not. But you did state in finance, it was pretty prevalent throughout. Those weren't just, singular images. It was pretty prevalent throughout Clarksville. Also, in regard to our current projects, I know it's talked about changing this date and everything, but where you have preliminary designs already in place or have been working on obtaining right-of-way throughout those areas, I mean, it's not as though these are going as site plans. This is a little bit completely differently in how the city handles things versus developers having to present their site plans,
Sure.
subdivision plans, things like that. And you also stated in the finance committee that, you feel as though if you're enforcing this on everyone else that's coming forward, you feel as though you should follow the same rules that we put in place for everyone else.
Sure, we need to be good stewards of our own ordinances, which was the genesis of my sitting down with Mr. Bittner and asking, would projects that we have based on his interpretation of the language. There was a phrase, any project or a planning document. Well, I think maybe our documents are planning documents. Does that mean when does this trigger? Because we would need to be looking at change orders to our engineering team to redesign the roadway, and in circumstances where we've already gotten past that point, we're through right-of-way, maybe going back out to properties to acquire more right-of-way, maybe more eminent domain cases, because now we're acquiring additional frontage for grass strips and that sort of stuff, or curb and gutter, where previously we were at edge of asphalt. So there's a lot of moving parts with that, a lot of projects that the city council has funded, and is funded based on an opinion of probable cost from those design firms at a defined dimension of 5 foot at potentially edge of asphalt. We're gonna have to redraw those things, whereas Mr. Riggins or Mr. Taylor may have signed off that their utilities as referenced were in the clear and not impacted by the design. Maybe now they are, and our costs only go up.
Okay, and of course, right now, we're talking about, this is March, we're getting ready to vote. First reading would be the April. If this were to pass, we're looking at a second reading, which is May, and May is when we're gonna be presented with our budget, books. I believe I've got an email right here. The May 3rd, the electronic budget books will be provided to council, so I would think that might be a bit of a issue for you. I know you've been working on your budget today.
Yes.
All right, that concludes my questions for you. Thank you very much. I appreciate you, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Yes, sir.
You have the floor. Madam, you have the floor. You done? Okay, that's all right. Councilperson Zacharias, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to keep this short because I did promise somebody that I would not do anything to unnecessarily extend this meeting. But so far in both the Finance Committee meeting and in the comments that I've heard here on the council floor, the opposition or the apparent opposition to this ordinance seems to fall into one of three categories. It's either it's too expensive, it's inconvenient or difficult, or we don't have to yet, nobody's making us, why should we do this? And I gotta say, if we're talking about doing something that is right for the people of Clarksville, those arguments do not hold any water for me. If it's the right thing to do, as federal agencies seem to indicate they believe that it is, as state agencies seem to believe that they think it is, then we need to do it. The time to do it is now and not later. I had another point, but I forgot it. I'm sorry. I'll push the button again if I remember. Thank you.
Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized.
Yes, I'd like to address a couple things. First of all, we talked about what's been done and approved by TDOT and what they have done or haven't done. And I would again remind you that they just updated their ordinances in August and published it in September. So these are coming. And I'm sure that it's the same thing as what we're doing. If it's already approved, then we're not going to make the changes. It's for future projects. I would also say as a city council or anybody that's in a legislative seat, we cannot legislate moral courage and integrity. We can only make the rules, and then it's up to the leadership of the community to enforce them. I'd also like to talk about sidewalks and boundaries. We continue to build roads and areas without sidewalks. I mean, we're talking about Manning Heights, which will not fall into this project because it already has an approved plan, but we're building a road and widening Manning Heights and not doing a sidewalk. And what we're also talking about, well, we're just talking about sidewalks. If you read ProWalk, if you go back and read the ProWalk, which is going to be the basis for ADA and will be the Department of Justice has made it clear that they will pass this by 2024. It's on their website. They talk about crosswalks. They talk about barriers. They talk about safety for people that are sight impaired. And we're only talking about $1. What about the people that are killed on our roads because we don't have a safe route on our roads and the go pass? This sidewalk is meant from this point forward, this ordinance. There is a very easy process for the director of streets to document why, when he's doing infill and it's spending community money, how he can waiver it, and he just has to put it in writing of those decisions made. It's also making, again, I've sat in the planning commission where the street department has made it very clear that sidewalks are required. And in different committees, they have overridden that requirement. That is one of the key reasons that I took up this ordinance and really started working on it, because the street department is the one that is best prepared to make those decisions and to decide when and if they can be completed safely. But at the bottom line, the safety and well-being of our community should center our decisions here, and not our pocketbooks. I understand there's a balance sometimes, but we've obviously have lost that center. One only has to drive down Madison to see people in their motorized wheelchairs driving down Madison because they can't get on the sidewalk. We can do better for the people of our community, or the ones that get off the bus to a dirt path. Right? We as a community can and should do better and center their safety and well-being. We can't do it all at once, but we can certainly stop the cycle of eminent domain and taxpayer-funded sidewalks and start making it happen as we build an infill. The barriers in width, again, the 2-foot barriers in width, that is a requirement. That was why TDOT did not have that requirement in the past. They've added it because ProWalk says that a person of limited sight must have a clear barrier between the sidewalk and traffic. They also, again, on this chart, talk about the speed of a vehicle, because if you're going 35 miles or less, you're less likely to jump that sidewalk while you're driving and texting. But if you're driving down Fort Campbell Boulevard and you're driving and texting and there's a sidewalk and no 2-foot barrier, you're going to pop up and over it much easier. I think, again, the process is there. I understand the cost, but there is a process in place that when those are not practical or cannot be done because of topographic, in the ordinance, it says one of the clear reasons to not do this is topographic. And so to continue to bring up some of those is really there's a process to overcome that. That's all I have.
Councilperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I have a question, and Mayor, maybe you can answer this or someone else can answer it. Does this really change the Regional Planning Commission? Because the Regional Planning Commission doesn't really, I mean, yes, they give recommendations on the zoning cases, but I don't know that they truly can be overridden by what we're passing in this ordinance, as well as Board of Appeals, the different ones. Can you advise me or someone advise me on the legal aspect of that?
Well, Mr. Bittner, welcome to the city attorney chair. If you could, if I may, call on Mr. Bittner to try to answer the question, or at least frame the question again so that he can either answer it or get us information.
It was just stated that this is going to stop the Regional Planning Commission or various other boards that, you know, have the ability to take, you know, the sidewalk requirement out. Is that, you know, that maybe the street department or whatever is put in? Does this ordinance actually have that ability to tell those groups what they're able to do or not able to do?
I don't, in my conversation with Mr. Tyndall this morning, I don't believe it has the authority to tell Regional Planning Commission what to do. And further than that, I'll check into it and get back with you before Thursday. But my understanding also is that the Regional Planning Commission can require the sidewalk, but they don't set the width. That's set by the street department.
Okay, just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bittner.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Also, I know it was stated, you know, we have to do what's right. The problem is, this isn't about doing what's right. We're already the sidewalks are already going in. We already have a sidewalk ordinance in place. But when you talk about the expense that's involved, again, looking at the two-foot barrier, the utility easements, everything that would be involved with that, with the sidewalk projects the city is going to have to do. You know, this council has talked about the need and the want for more sidewalks so that we can get them everywhere that they need to be. The thing is, then you put all these different stipulations in place, including PROAG, which, as we've already said, actually, there seems to be a discrepancy between the street department, who regularly works with TDOT, and the sponsor of this as to whether or not they have adopted the PROAG requirements or not, regarding the 2-foot strip, everything with that. But what you really, you know, come back to is, are we going to do less sidewalks? Because it's going to cost more money, plain and simple. For the sidewalks that we're going to do, it's going to cost quite a bit more money for us to be able to do it. So do you want to do a third to 2/3 or a half less sidewalks, or do you want to substantially increase our taxes to pay for it? I mean, there's only two options there. You either pay more or you do less. That's the point really I'm trying to make. That, again, the director, what he's asked for is the word "and." It's going to get that taken care of. And again, a comma, it's going to get it taken care of for that within the development, as well as to other roads that are connecting to it. So there's ways that we can fix this, something that he's wanted fixed for some time, but this process has taken so many months that time has gone by. There could have been projects that have gone through where that could have resolved it sooner than now. I just can't see where us putting in place regulations that aren't required yet by the federal government. It has not been adopted by the U.S. Department of Justice and the U.S. Department of Transportation. I know it's been stated that they're going to do it this year, but there's a lot of times we hear things that are going to happen and they still don't happen. Like I said, discrepancy on whether Tennessee has adopted it, not adopted it. To me, until those are actually in place and required, I'm not sure why we're going to try and enforce something that actually can't officially be enforced until at least those two agencies have adopted it. So I'm going to be voting against it. And as the chair of the Finance Committee, I cannot, in good conscience, say that we want to make these projects cost 2 to 3 times as much as what they cost now.
Councilperson Zacharias, you're recognized.
I wrote it down this time. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
And it is kind of a continuation of what I was saying before. If we are going to wait until we find a solution to that has no negatives, that's easy to implement, or that doesn't hurt in some way, we are never going to grow as a city or as a community. One of the first votes that I was fortunate enough to participate in after I was initially appointed to the city council was to change our city code to reflect a new interpretation of some anti-discrimination laws that were found in a Supreme Court opinion. There is precedent that this council is willing to update our city code to address protections for classes of people that have been determined to be inadequate. And I believe that this sidewalk ordinance does that. Thank you.
Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized.
Yes, I'd just like to repeat a conversation that I had a while back. I had sat down with Mr. Tyndall and spoke about this, and his intent is to update the ordinances at the RPC after this is passed. It makes no sense to make changes to any of their processes until we have approved this sidewalk ordinance. So that is a conversation that I had with him. But I also would like to say that updating and sending and approving this sends a clear message to the rest of the and sets a precedence that we expect that sidewalks be approved or disapproved at the street department. And once again, we keep talking about the cost. The cost, I mean, if your child runs across the street and gets hit by a car, which has happened at one of our schools because there was no sidewalk, how much money would you pay for that? And just like my good friend Jennifer, who lost her brother-in-law because there was no sidewalk to walk on, what is a life worth in our community? And what is the health and welfare of our community worth? I would like to say again, I shared the link on the document. If you go back to TDOT's regulation, it is on their website. It is not incorporated into all of their language, but Chapter 3 multimodal of the TDOT website has been updated to follow ProWalk.
Councilperson McLaughlin, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I promise to keep it short. In trying to address some of the concerns of previous speakers, I do want to point out that throughout this document, the word where feasible, or the phrase where feasible is throughout. So in some cases, if there's a situation where we, the city, decide to go back and put sidewalks in, if there is a drainage ditch or a steep grade in a driveway, some of the examples that have been shown, that would probably be determined by the street department not to be feasible. So there is that clause throughout about where feasible. It doesn't say will happen, shall happen, must happen. There are outs throughout the document based on feasibility of what the recommendations are. So I just wanted to bring that up. Thank you.
Thank you. We're now ready for the rest of your report. Chairperson Streetman.
Thank you, Mayor. Resolution 41, 2023-24, a resolution authorizing a memorandum of understanding with Combat Veterans Motorcycle Association, Tennessee, Chapter 18-2, pertaining to a memorial wall at Patriots Park. Both the Finance and the Parks and Recreation Committees voted in favor of approval.
All right, thank you. I think Councilperson McLaughlin was the sponsor originally, way back yonder. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Without any objection, I'd like to ask Mr. Joe Davis from Combat Veterans Motorcycle Association 18-2 to take over the speaking and go through the PowerPoint presentation.
Okay, Mr. Davis? Your name's been called. You would just give us your name and then you're recognized to do your presentation.
My name is Joe Davis. I'm a resident member of the Clarksville community, as well as a veteran, 22 years in the Army, retired, and now I serve differently under the Combat Veterans Motorcycle Association. It is a 501c3 here in our local community. We have chapters nationwide, or actually international now, under a 501c19 overhead organization. So as of 2021, we had approval from the city to build a memorial wall down at Patriots Park. The purpose of this wall, I'm not sure how to use this thing.
Great
Okay,
job.
there we go. The purpose of this wall is to recognize those service members that Fort Campbell has lost since September 11th, 2001. And what makes it different from the various monuments and memorials that they have on Fort Campbell is this is publicly accessible to be at Patriots Park, and it includes all the units. And that's one thing that's lacking with everything that Fort Campbell provides and anything else around our area, is it's not accessible and it doesn't cover everybody. So that's what we're working on here. And throughout the time that we've been working on this and trying to raise funds, we found it quite challenging to ask people to help fund this memorial. As much as people are passionate about it and want to have it, it's hard to dig into the pocketbooks. So our big change that we've come up with, I'll come back to this. As you enter into the park from the parking lot, you can see the brick walkway that you enter there, and each of the two walls facing on the sides are where the monument and memorial would be. So one of the things to help bolster donations is to do some donor bricks similar to this. So if somebody gives, say, $200, they'll get to have their name on that walkway on the way in. Because people like to be recognized for the positive things they do. So the second part of that, and I can't bring it here into this council chamber to show you, is to put benches down the center line. And these benches would be facing both directions. And those, of course, are for much larger donations because it is a significant amount of money that we need to raise for this project. And there would be approximately 6 benches, possibly up to 8 benches. They do fit within the area that's available and provide adequate walkway for both handicapped and non-handicapped personnel to get through there and to be able to view and spend time with their loved ones, their friends, those that are represented on this memorial wall. As part of our history with this park and why this location is so important to us, the Combat Veterans Motorcycle Association, Chapter 18-2, that's here in Clarksville, we're the ones that put these flags out every time you see them. Of course, the new eagle isn't shown in these pictures. They're a little bit old, but so we had to change our structure. But we put these flags out, and the same names that each of these flags represent is what we're trying to represent on this wall. And we want to make sure that nobody is forgotten in our efforts to do this project.
Is that it?
I think that covers it.
Okay, thank you. First, thank you for your service. Councilperson McLaughlin, you have the floor.
Great job. So basically what the memorandum of understanding in front of us for approval is update to the previous MOU to make the dates current and also reflect the fundraising efforts to include the benches and the bricks as part of the project. Ms. Letourneau has been with us since the very beginning of this. She has helped partner us with an architect that's approved by the city. And so now it's time for us, especially at the Wings of Liberty Museum actually happening next year, for everything to come together and for us as a community to be able to permanently recognize Fort Campbell's fallen since 9/11. We have partnered with Congressman Green's office as our arm to reach to Fort Campbell on the names of the fallen so that we don't forget anybody. We've scrubbed the list multiple times. We're back at the final pushback to make sure that we have everyone because some of us feel like there might be a discrepancy in the numbers. So we're doing our due diligence to make sure it's accurate. So we just ask for your all's approval on this. Like Joe mentioned, CVMA has been part of efforts at Patriots Park since about 2011. Including building the flower bed that is there off the retaining wall and keeping the grounds clean. And just would appreciate your all support. I feel like in this community, everybody probably knows one name that will be represented on that wall. Some people will know multiple names. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Thank you very much. All right. Chairperson Streetman, you're recognized.
That concludes my report, Mayor.
Okay. Now ready for the Gas and Water Committee report, Chairperson Holloman.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll have a full report next week.
All right, thank you. Neighborhood and Community Services, Chairperson Shekina, be recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll have a full report next week.
Thank you. Parks and Recreation Committee, Chairperson Zacharias.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll have a full report next week.
Thank you. Public Safety Committee, Chairperson Red, channeling him. He'll have a full report next week. Transportation, Streets, and Garage Committee, Chairperson Smith, you're recognized.
I have a report April the 4th.
All right, thank you. Now we're ready for new business. Consideration of Resolution 43, 2023-24. Resolution authorizing reapplication of zone change for property located on a parcel of property fronting the east frontage of Trenton Road, 285 plus or minus feet south of the Trenton Road and Cypress Street intersection from R1 Single Family Residential District to R4 Multiple Family Residential District requires a 3/4 majority vote. Councilperson Little, you're the sponsor and you are recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. The applicant had reached out to me and had just requested that they would be given the opportunity to go back and get a traffic study done. There was no opposition during our hearing from anybody in public. I think we have voted it down just because of the street and area like that. I felt like this would be an opportunity for us to be able to go ahead and give the same opportunity we've given to other people, and plus if they want to provide more data for their build or anything they want to do, there's no problem with gathering more data. Data is important, and I think it'd be a good thing for us to look into.
Okay. Councilperson Shekina, you have a question or a comment? You're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a comment. I just ask that we vote no on this resolution on Trenton Road. We don't need to increase the traffic on Trenton Road, especially in the areas where we don't have dedicated major intersections or even right-of-way access, left turn, right turn lanes and things like that. So, my stand still stands, as I did the last meeting. This proposal is not a good idea. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Just the posture of this is that we will have to vote, it will require a 3/4 majority vote to consider Resolution 43, and then if that passes, Resolution 43 will then be taken up. Any further comment or question about the consideration or the resolution? Seeing none, we're ready for Resolution 44, 2023-24 resolution expressing the sense of the City Council pertaining to the decorum and civility between City Council members and with regard to the treatment of city employees and members of the public by the City Council. Councilperson Lovato, you're the sponsor and you are recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Real quick, this is literally just Robert's rules verbatim, putting it into a resolution, just reminding all of us how we are supposed to behave towards each other, professional and courteous, not just to each other, but city employees and our constituents, inside council meetings and our committee meetings. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilperson Streetman on this resolution,
Yes, sir.
you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to thank the council member for Ward 12 for her work on this and bringing this forward. I agree that that's something that's very important that we do, both, like you said, to each other, all 13 of us, as well as everybody that comes up to the microphone. So thank you for bringing forward this respectful resolution.
Okay, any more comment or question regarding Resolution 44? Seeing none, hearing none. Councilperson Smith, I'm sorry, you're recognized.
Yes, I was just wondering, my thinking here, if it's already in the Robert Rules of Order and we abide by the Robert Rules of Order, why would we need to make this a resolution?
Is that a question to the sponsor?
To the sponsor.
You're recognized, Councilperson Lovato.
Thank you. So, with my conversations with Mr. Baker, he felt that putting it in a resolution was the best option. I'm sorry, I don't really know why it would, Robert's rules versus the resolution, but this was at the advice of Mr. Baker.
Councilperson Smith, you're recognized.
Thank you for trying to respond to this, but I don't see this making sense to make it into a resolution. It's already a part of the Robert Rules of Order. That's what we abide by as a council. Anyway, so it doesn't make sense to me.
I understand.
Okay, Councilperson McLaughlin, you're recognized on Resolution 44.
Thank you, Mayor. To clear up a previous question, this is not an ordinance. This is not creating a change to our code. It's just clarifying what the rules of decorum should be for us as we conduct the city's business. So it's not amending or changing the actual code.
Councilperson Zacharias, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I was also going to try to address that question. I mean, as council members, as city employees, we get ethics training every year. I learn more about gas and water through required training every year. Sometimes it's just good to be reminded. That's all.
Councilperson Smith, you're recognized.
Thank you for the previous speakers. It's always, you can always go back and read the Robert Rules of Order to remind yourself as to how you are to behave. So if it's already in the Robert Rules of Order, why do you need a resolution? Doesn't make sense. Remind yourself by rereading. Go back and look at the Robert Rules of Orders. That's how you remind yourself as to how to conduct yourself. And some of us been doing this for 12 years. So it's nothing new. This is old. Thank you.
Councilperson McLaughlin, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. By it being a resolution that all of us have a chance to review and discuss, it's much like when we sign our conflict of interest statement. It's a reminder for all of us, right on a page and a half of how we should behave. I'm well versed with Robert's Rules of Order. Thank you.
Councilperson Smith,
Thank you, Mayor. As I said, read the Robert Rules of Orders, and it will tell you what your behavior should be. Nothing new. Don't need to make a resolution. It's already law.
okay, we're now ready for public comment. Our city code allows 3 people, 5 minutes each. If you're a member of the public and wish to address the council, we'll invite you up now. Seeing none, we're ready for mayor and council member comments. Councilperson McLaughlin, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I would ask any city employees that plan on being at our next voting session and members of the council to please wear purple. As the mayor will be doing a proclamation for Month of the Military Child, we'll have representatives from Fort Campbell here to accept that in care or in place of the military children. And then also the Customs House Museum is once again doing the Month of the Military Child art show at the museum during the month of April, and they'll be featuring artwork made and created by military children. So if you have a chance to stop by and see that, it was really a great experience last year when they had the reception and I watched kids drag their parents around to show them where their art was. But it's a great exhibit and a great way to celebrate the military children. So thank you.
No, thank you. Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized.
Yes, thank you. I was asked by the Islamic Center of Clarksville. We are, as a community, cordially invited to engage with our Muslim neighbors. This is their month of Ramadan, and they are having an open house on Saturday, March 30th, from 4 to 5 p.m. And if you have questions, you can reach out to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilperson Lovato, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. With permission from Amber, our city councilwoman from Ward 5, she did have her baby girl this morning at 8:30, and miraculously, she is already at home, so.
All right, Councilperson Streetman, top that.
I cannot, but I am going to say thank you to our city employees that participated this past weekend in the Big Brothers Big Sisters Bowl for Kids' Sake. There was quite a few that came out. I will also say that there was a big spirit competition between Clarksville Gas and Water employees and the Clarksville Fire and Rescue. You could actually hear that competition walking into the building, and they continued going back and forth to see who had the most spirit for being there. But there was so many different employees there, and I just want to thank you all for everything that you do to give back to the various nonprofits and organizations throughout our community. You are greatly appreciated. Also, want to just say a happy Easter to everybody this weekend too, although Mayor, I'm sure you're saying something. I just wanted to say it briefly.
No, I was just asking, did you keep score for both for kids' sake? I'm getting 0. Yes, we did. Fire rescue win? Okay, that's why he raised his hand. Councilperson Streetman?
I was going to say the kids won because
Okay.
they raised money for the kids in our community.
All right, good answer. All right, any other comment? All right, ladies and gentlemen, that adjourns this executive session. See you next week.